Hello and welcome to the Collective Basketball Agreements Podcast. I am your host, Joe Manganiello. Got a fun one today, recapping the 2025 free agency period for the Indiana Fever. Indiana coming off, a so-so 2024 season, 20-20 record, third in the WNBA's Eastern Conference. They got swept in the first round by the Connecticut Sun. We'll talk a little bit about that in this matchup, but to be honest, last year, leave that in the rear view mirror because the Indiana Fever are coming fast and furious for 2025 glory in the W. A little bit of a recap here on the fundamentals from last year. Offensive rating of 106.1, third in the W. Caitlin Clark's rookie year, they're already third in offense. Wow. Defensive rating 109.5, 11th in the W. Room for improvement there. This one's a little funny. 6th in the W in net rating, minus 3.4. So, the W, I think, is still, this is interesting. A 12-team league last year. It'll be a 13-team league this upcoming season. A negative 3.4 net rating in the NBA would indicate that you're like a sub-playoff team, like not really in the mix at all. Indiana was a low seed this past year. Again, with that defensive rating 109.5 being second from the bottom, it's easy to see how you get to a negative net rating. I think also the team arguably got better over the course of the year too. And so knowing that they've improved the personnel the way that they have, I think it's pretty clear that Stephanie White in her first season coaching this Indiana Fever team is going to have plenty of options as well as expectations, for this upcoming year. Looking at their financial fundamentals, they have 4 guaranteed contracts, including 1 fourth-year option that was picked up for Lexi Hull. 7 unguaranteed contracts. They do have an open roster spot. That was actually just recently opened by waiving Katie Lou Samuelson. That might be worth talking about right up in front for a second. Katie Lou Samuelson is returning to Seattle after the buyout. She appeared in 27 games in 2021. 24 starts, shot 35.1% from 3, but hasn't had the same success since then. Has, been kind of up and down. And I think ultimately for Indiana, the decision was, we're adding a lot of talent. We have a lot of great shooting on the team. Samuelson was at 33% this past year, a sub 35% field goal percentage. Didn't get to the line all that much. So, I just think Indiana clearly is going to have other offensive players that they're prioritizing in the rotation this upcoming year. So I wasn't shocked to see the announcement. I do think it was pretty creative and pretty interesting for both sides to come together and agree on that. We'll talk a little bit more about her when we get to Seattle, her return to Seattle. But let's stay on Indiana right now because, baby, they did some stuff this winter. So, in rounding out the financial fundamentals, $112K left in cap space, so not a ton of money. They have the number 19 and number 20 picks in the second round, and they have the number 33 pick in the third round. So we'll see what exactly they do between now and the draft, if they intend on using at least one of those selections or not. I would guess that they would use both of those selections. The draft is going to be deeper and deeper every year, and I think you can get good talent in the second round now. But I'll tell you one thing. Indiana, they already know the future of this team in terms of their best young talent. They got it already in the tuck. Caitlin Clark and Aliyah Boston. This is maybe the most exciting young duo in professional basketball. There isn't really a player like Aliyah Boston in the NBA, in my opinion, a power forward with her combination of size and instinct, one of the brightest smiles in the sport, off the floor, savvy, stylish. She is a real superstar, big. And what a great partner for her to have, Caitlin Clark coming to the league and being able to push the tempo, get the ball moving down the court, motivating teammates to run the lanes, run out to the corners, space the floor. High pick and roll combination, Clark Boston. And I'll just say briefly, like, I really hope that the national media coverage around this team, around Clark, matures as we keep doing this. This is exciting to see young basketball players thriving, having success. Good competition is great. It's not about, you don't have to love everybody. You can have your rooting interests. But I'm watching this Fever team because I love basketball. And I think there's millions and millions of people all over the world that feel the same way. I think this team is poised to take a huge step forward under Stephanie White coming over from Connecticut. Pretty straightforward. Hey, we were 11th in defense last year, coach. How can we get better? How can we flirt with the top 5 along with being a top 10 defense? How can we cut down our turnovers and force some additional turnovers, right? How can we keep pace, keep up 3-point rate without being every game's 95 to 94 barn burner, can't get any stops? How can we fortify the glass, right? You don't want to lose your identity as a team, but I think every young run and gun style team eventually has to learn playoff victories, playoff games, period. The scoring is going to slow down. The pace is going to slow down. You got to be able to play in different ways against the best competition. So really excited to see what Coach White does there. The Fever were 3rd in points per game, 85 points, 3rd with the 106.1 offensive rating. Something I'm really excited about is coaching staff working with Aliyah Boston, right? So Stephanie White coached Alyssa Thomas and saw Alyssa Thomas become, really take her game up to another level. She was great in Connecticut before White got there, but really getting the most out of a playmaking center, a big that can do more and quite frankly needs to be schemed and positioned in the ways that best accentuate her talents, right? Like I couldn't imagine watching Connecticut these past few years and not seeing Alyssa Thomas with the ball in her hands in creative handoff opportunities, give and go opportunities, working with the guards, almost functioning like a guard for large stretches of games. And notably, Boston had a 20% usage in her second season and a 17% assist rate in her second season as a big. I think there's a lot of potential there for Aliyah Boston to develop more playmaking, to develop more well-rounded offensive tendencies. She has the physicality to go get behind the defense, finish deep in the post, and score. But could we see Aliyah Boston averaging 4, 5, 6 assists per game, something like that, and playing, leveraging the threat of the high pick and roll with her and Caitlin? If teams are going to trap Caitlin over the top, let's get Aliyah going downhill, almost Draymond Green style, and finding shooters all over the floor. Speaking of shooters all over the floor, we got to talk about all the shooting that came to the team, because you could argue, I think Phoenix probably takes the cake in terms of being the most active team this offseason, but Indiana was right up there. And even though they didn't add 2 superstars, I think you could argue the 3 players that they added, and I'll even include Brianna Turner as a 4th player that I'm really excited about. But adding DeWanna Bonner, Natasha Howard, and Sophie Cunningham, you can really see the playoff rotation forming in Indiana this year, and it's going to be formidable. Why don't we start with Natasha Howard? She signs for the straight max in the WNBA. That, as a reminder, it's $214,000, $666. 33-year-old Natasha Howard, stretch 4, stretch 5. I think probably at this stage in her career, I think you're going to want to see her playing more forward. But I think the more important thing to keep in mind is that her and Aliyah Boston can and will be playing on the floor at the same time. And I really love that. I think to help this defense, you got to add height and shot blocking ability and give Aliyah Boston a chance to play within the assignment. But now you got someone like Natasha Howard who can come in over the top or come over and help from the weak side. I'm thinking about like the Minnesota matchup. If Collier is getting going in the post and you want Boston to be the primary assignment, but now you've got Natasha Howard who can come over the top and time a block shot. You think about that, essentially finals winning play that Niara Sabally made blocking Collier. Could Howard sort of be that weak side help defense along the front line for Indiana? I really like that. Indiana's able to sign DeWanna Bonner away from Connecticut. $200,000 deal, unprotected. But, I think for Bonner, this is an incredible opportunity at age 37 to extend her career playing in a great role. Being someone who can run to the corner, space the floor, someone that can get the ball in big spots and run the show, especially if Caitlin needs a breath. I just think that this is an incredible opportunity. It's not a perfect player comp, but I'm almost thinking like when Ray Allen signed with Miami in the NBA, and now all of a sudden LeBron and Wade and Bosh, they're trying to figure out the best ways to play with each other. Now you added a veteran player who knows exactly where to be, who's been there, done that. Just really love that fit. And then maybe a closer Ray Allen comparison to Sophie Cunningham, one of the best shooters in the league. That trade was interesting because it was part of that larger 4-team super deal. And they essentially turned the number 8 pick into Sophie Cunningham. I've heard both sides. I think WNBA teams really need to value the draft with so many great players in college. And I think the league is just going to be flooded with talent in the years to come. And so having draft picks where you can grab a great developing talent on a rookie scale contract. And I guess the argument, especially going into the unknown of 2026, was you could draft someone at number 8. They're on a multi-year deal, rookie scale, unprotected. And that's just one less roster spot you have to worry about heading into the unknown of the new collective bargaining agreement. But if Indiana wanted to make themselves as good as possible for next season, justify those high ticket prices, I get it. Because this lineup, Boston, Howard, Cunningham, Bonner, Clark, that is something. So I'm really pumped. That's going to be a great team. And I also really like adding Brianna Turner, age 28 forward, former Defensive Player of the Year candidate. It's a 1-year deal, $85K, so just a little above the veteran minimum. You get this defensive-minded post. I think Turner can play alongside Boston. I think Turner and Howard will play together on the second unit. So I'm thrilled with that. I think that's a great signing. But forgive me because it's possible that I have saved, the best contract for last because Kelsey Mitchell's back. And it wasn't a surprise that Indiana extended the core to Kelsey Mitchell. So we knew that it was most likely going to be a supermax salary. There was some speculation, hey, is Kelsey Mitchell going to get traded? But I'm really glad to see that she'll be back. She's back on the $249,000 salary, highest salary in the W. The starting lineup will almost certainly be Clark and Mitchell. And I like the idea that Bonner could maybe be the 6th man, or maybe you have a small starting lineup and you bring Sophie Cunningham off the bench. I think the politics of which veterans are going to start and who exactly is going to come off the bench, it's a good problem to have. I think Indiana choosing to hold on to Mitchell instead of, because I was curious, what trade opportunities would be out there for someone like Mitchell. But ultimately, I think it just made sense for both sides. Let's max you out, come back. We have one of the best top 6 rotations in the league now. Mitchell, Howard, Bonner, Cunningham, Clark, Boston, Brianna Turner, Lexi Hull off the bench. They also added Sydney Colson, 35-year-old vet, for a tidy $90,000 deal. That should help at backup point guard. So I'm excited. Indiana's going to be at the top of my list in terms of appointment viewing all season long. And I really, beyond being, I think, a lock to make the playoffs, I think Indiana is deservingly so going to be a trendy pick to win a playoff series or two. So really excited to see what they do in the draft, how they fortify the bottom of their roster and kind of think about the future of this franchise. Of course, having Caitlin and Aliyah, is a head start for the unknown years to come and future years of the WNBA. But knowing that you have those two at a minimum is a great place to be. An 8-figure basketball facility complex on the way. And I think so much to look forward to in terms of the business of basketball in Indiana. When you're selling tickets on the road, for other teams the way that they are, I think that any controversy aside, which I sort of talked about at the top of the podcast here, this is just a great story. It's just great to see a basketball team with young talent. They have everyone's attention. They're piquing everyone's curiosity. Can't wait to see what they do in future seasons. Stay tuned for more free agent recaps here on the Collective Basketball Agreements podcast.